Here's a little update on the knife pleat Roman shades I'm working on. I have them all fabricated to the point where they are ready to be mounted to the boards and then strung onto the clutches. Here is the top, and you can see the raw edges are still showing. That part gets mounted to the board and then covered up by the valance. Okay, so I'm finally on the finishing stages of these Roman shades. I have my weight bar in the bottom here, and I just have to stitch up the hole. I started mounting the Roman shade onto the board. The shade will come off the back of the board, so I'm standing at the top of it now, so that's why it's upside down. I have the shade stapled to the back of the board, just like that. And then I'm going to cover up these staples, but I wanted to check the measurement first up on the wall over there with those brackets. I wanted to just go over how this works before I close it up. So you can see that the board is still open on the top, and that's because I'm gonna add this valance before I close it up. And this valance will cover up the continuous clutch that goes in front of the shade. I'm not gonna add that yet, but this is where the clutch is gonna go, onto the board right here, and that's why we need a valance. And because it's back mounted, we need to get the strings from the back to come through the front. So one of the things this is gonna need is some grommets, 4 grommets at each ring placement. And I have to be careful about where I place those so that they're not too high and interfere with the clutch, and not so low that you see them underneath the valance. So I'm going to show you how I measured it on the wall, show you how I used just a couple of L brackets up on the wall and then one in the middle to keep the shade from falling down as I'm just checking the measurements. This way I don't have to anchor it at all. And then so these 2 bottom L brackets is where I'm going to set the shade, and this top one just keeps it from falling off. And now I can get my tape measure and check the length. So here we have 46.5, and here we have 46.5. So now that I'm confident that the shade is the correct length and it's even on the bottom, I can go ahead and close up that part on the board. And then I'm gonna just peel back this layer of lining and cover up these staples, and then that will leave me enough in the front, once the valance is on there, to cover up those staples. So that's why this is extra long. Okay, so I have the lining covering up the staples that are holding the Roman shade on the board, which this will be inside mount, and you won't see that anyway. So now I need to find out where my rings are on the back. So I'm just gonna measure and remind myself. So that end one is 2 inches over from the end. And then we have the next one is 10 1/8. And the side is also 2 inches over, and then 10 1/8 from there. And the middle one, the middle 2 rings are 10 inches apart. So now I'm gonna come onto the front and measure over those distances and then up a certain distance. And I need to decide what that distance is. I just have to consider that this clutch is going to be mounted onto the board, and I need to make sure that the grommet is below this mark right here. You can see that if I'm at 4 inches, that would definitely clear, but I don't really want to be that low, so I think I might go to 3 or 3.5 inches from the board right here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to measure over 2 inches and then 3.5 inches down, and then 10 1/8 from there will be the other row of rings, 3.5 inches down, and so on. And then I'll mark it with a Sharpie, and that'll be where I make the hole, and that's where I'm gonna put the grommets in. Can't see that dot, but that's a dot marked in Sharpie. This is a dot. We need this board underneath so we don't put a hole in our table. This is our spot right here. Right there, it's a little dot right there. So I want to put a hole in the fabric first, which is scary, but You gotta do it. This is a hole cutter. You just place it right over your dot and then with a hammer, beat it up until there's a hole in the fabric. So this will be a little loud. I'm going through a lot of layers, so this might not be a very sharp tool. There we go. We're through now. I'm just gonna clean it up with a scissor. So there's our hole. There it is. And so now the other tools necessary to put the grommet in the fabric. This part goes underneath, and you want to place this part right there. And then put that through the hole. And then this part goes on top. And this little kit comes with instructions. So this is called the washer, and the other part is called the grommet. The grommet goes onto the base down here, which is stuck now to the fabric. So you want to put that grommet into the base, and then make sure it's going, all the fabric is going around the grommet, and then put the washer over that. And then this tool is the other half of the die. It's called a die set. You place that on top, and then you're gonna hit this part with the hammer. And then as you're doing it, you want to spin this so that it gets even pressure all the way around. And that's about all it takes. It's already secure. Isn't that cool? So now I'll move on to the next one over here. First I have to cut the hole. Oops. Make sure there's no fabric underneath in the way. Just place the cutter over the hole and use the hammer to cut it. Okay, that's good. You don't want to over tap it because it can actually put a hole in this black outlining on the back. I only know that because it's happened before, so don't over pound on the grommets. Okay, moving on to number 3. And there is a right and wrong way to put this washer on there. You can feel the bevel, so you want that part down. It's good. Last one. So now we have all 4 grommets in the back, and they should line up with the rings. Let's see how we did. So here's a ring. That one will go up there. This one will go up there. This one there, and this one there. Okay, now that I have the grommets in the fabric, that's where the string is going to come up from the back of the Roman, through the grommets, and then through this continuous clutch system. So I'm going to mount this on next before I string it. The first thing I need to do is put 5 little tiny screw eyes into the board to help guide the strings to the part of the clutch where they're going to clip into the clutch. Where I'm going to put those coordinates to where the rings are coming from the back of the shade. So the outside row of rings is in 2 inches. So my first little screw eye is going to be 2 inches in from the board. So I'm going to just put a little pin right there to mark that. And then same thing on the other side, 2 inches in. I'm going to use this awl to just tap a little hole, and I'm coming up from the edge of the board 3/8 of an inch or so. I don't want it to be too close to the clutch, so that's where I'm going to start that hole, and then I can manually screw that screw eye in, and I'm going to leave it at a slight angle. Same thing on the other side. And this will all make sense once the cords are strung up and connected to the clutch. Okay, so then I want to put one underneath this section of the clutch just to keep the string from wrapping around the gears. If that string is floating freely underneath there, and as this is spinning, the string could get connected up and entangled into that basket right there. What I need to determine is where the strings are going to connect to the clutch. Typically the ones in the middle connect directly to one of these brackets. That one will go to this bracket and this one will go to this bracket. And then since the ends don't connect to a bracket, they have to go through a screw eye underneath this and then through another screw eye right here, and that's where that one will connect. So I need a screw eye right there. And then this end, I have too many brackets on this, so I'm going to take out 2. This end, far end row of rings will go through this screw eye and then over to another screw eye under here. So that's why I need a total of 5 screw eyes. Always one for each end, always one under the basket, and usually one just past the clutch, and usually one over here for that end row to connect. So now I know this is about where this is going to go. So these are the clips that clip the string to the shaft. Once the string comes through the screw eye, I have to have enough room for this clip to fit onto the end of this shaft. So that means I need to come in from the end of the shaft at least an inch. So I'm just going to eyeball that right there, and then that's where I'm going to put the last screw eye. And you can see the reason why these screw eyes need to be so small is that the string goes underneath this whole system. So if the screw eyes were too tall, the string would get all tangled up. And you want to put those screw eyes in first because it's really difficult to put them in once this whole thing is screwed down. So now I want to mark where the brackets are going to get attached. The center of my grommet right here is at 12 1/8. So that's where I'm going to mark the board. That's where you want to place the front of the bracket, the inside of the bracket. And then same thing on this side, 12 1/8. We're going to screw the actual clutch to the end, making sure that it doesn't extend, you know, past the edge so that it fits inside the window. Okay, so now I'm trying to keep everything centered on the board, and I want to make sure that the shaft is floating freely so everything stays straight. You can wait to tighten those until everything is set up. Tighten everything down. And then if it squeaks, which they usually do, you can spray some silicone spray on the clutch and the shaft, and then that'll eliminate a little bit of squeaking, but it helps it flow freely. And now I'm ready to string the string from the back of the shade and through the grommets and then connect everything to the clutch. See how it works and raise the shade. Okay, now I have the shade turned over onto its back, and I'm measuring out the amount of string I need for each row. Here's the end of the string. It's going to go through this bottom ring, and then each ring for each row. It's going to go through the clutch on the front and then over to that screw eye right about here. So that's how much string I need for that one. Cut it a little bit long. I need about the same amount for the other side, so I'll just use that as the measuring tool. So there's my 2 ends, and then for the 2 middle rows, I pretty much just need from the bottom to the top. So I'll cut one more. Okay, so there's all my string, and I'll start stringing these through. These are the safety locks that I'm going to use so that this shade will not allow enough string to be pulled if a child is playing with it and wrapped around their head. So there is a separate little plastic piece that locks it into place at the bottom. So as I'm stringing the cord shade string through each ring, I have to put it through a cord lock as well. Okay, so I'm stringing this Roman shade cord through each ring and also through the safety lock. All you got to do is there's a little notch in each lock, and then put that through the ring and then hold on to it while you string the cord through there. These are from, oh, Safety Shade. That's where I got it from. Safety Shade. That's the locks at the bottom, and this is the 1.4 millimeter locks. So this little clip that goes in the very last ring will lock that cord into place, but I'm not ready to do that yet because I have to make sure that it goes in the exact right place, and I don't want to lose the string as I'm working at the clutch at the top. So I'm going to put an orb on the bottom of each one just so I don't accidentally pull that cord through, because then I have to come back and string them all again. So this is just temporary. See, now I can't pull that through because the orb at the bottom is preventing that cord from coming loose. So now I'm going to put each cord through the corresponding grommet, and then it's to the front. Then I'll flip it over and connect the string to the clutch. This far end string is going to go through the screw eye right there, and then remember that one we put underneath right here? It's going to go through that one and then through this one, and then it's going to clip to the shaft right there. And then this one is going to go through the top of the bracket right there, and then we can clip it. Same with this one, just going through that little hole at the top of the bracket. And then this end goes through the end grommet and then this grommet. And this is where it gets tricky. We're going to clip it to this side of the screw eye, which seems opposite of where it should go because it wants to go that way. But we have to always be on the outside of each either bracket or screw eye. So I'll show you how that works. We gotta have our clips. So to connect the string and the clip to the shaft, we have to put a little knot at the end of the string. Just one little knot is all you need. And then there is a big hole on one end of this clip and a skinny hole on the other end. So the bigger hole is where the knot gets lodged into, just like that. And then the string comes out of the skinny hole. So now that the clip is connected to the string and it's knotted, all we got to do is snap it into place. And again, make sure that this shaft is all the way touching the clutch rather than all the way out. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And then you can clip the string, and I don't want to be right on top of it, so we don't want the clip there. We want to be next to it. Just like we're going to be next to the bracket over here, we're going to be next to the screw eye over here, not on top of it. This one, it's impossible to be on top of because the bracket's in the way, so we're going to be right next to it. So we just need a little knot, run that through the clip, pull on it to lodge that knot inside the clip. You want to have the string be as close to the bracket as possible when you're clipping it on, rather than having it wrapped around once, in either direction. So just be thoughtful about where you're snapping it on. So see, this one is kind of in a different position as this one, but only because I'm trying to keep the cord as close to where it's coming from as possible. And so that's why it's okay that each one is in a different rotation, as long as the knot on each one is on the correct side rather than on the inside. If your knots are on the wrong side, then as the shaft is spinning, the string will wrap around this clip and the shade will be crooked because of that. So you'll know if you do it wrong, but you might not know what happened. Oh, and here's my little cap that I lost. That goes on the end. And then, so see this one, we're gonna clip kind of at an angle from this screw eye. Okay, that's it. They're all set. Okay, so now we can turn it over again, and I'm gonna try to get the bottoms a little bit more locked into place as to where they should be, then I'll string it up. So I just want to move up each of these orbs to kind of get the shade balanced. Okay, I think it's gonna look good, so let's give it a go. Okay, so I'm gonna just look at the back and see that none of these are too tight. Oh, my weight slipped out. I still have to stitch up that hole. I'm going to raise the shade by pulling on the chain. Lovely. I can pull a little bit higher. That's about as high as you'd ever want to go. But now it's going to get a valance over top, so don't forget. You probably will not need to raise it that high. I think we'll just stop it where that part is flat, and then the valance will hang in front of that, and it'll look really pretty below the valance. And so now you can see how each string wrapped around the shaft between the clip and the bracket, and here between the clip and the screw eye. And you can see how much the shaft moved over, maybe 7/8 of an inch. And so if it was maybe a 99-inch finish length, this gap would be much bigger. And so you'd have to have more room for this string to wrap up. And so sometimes I run this outside string into the middle of two brackets, and that gives me more room. So I'm going to call that good and move on to connecting the valance. Okay, I have this valance carefully pinned into place and measured to make sure it's even, and see how the valance is covering up the clutch. And the pattern matches the rest of the shade. So now that I know it's secure in the right place and it's the right length all the way across, I'm gonna staple it, and then I can close it up. Here is the top of the board, and I'm just gonna run a few staples. Just take out all the pins, then I'll cut off the extra and then close it up. Now I can take this flap and close up the top of the board and hide all those staples in the raw edge of the fabric. Okay, I do still have to do that bottom clip here and stitch up the hole for the weight that I put in, the weight bar. Also, I'm going to connect a tension device to keep the continuous cord bolted to the inside of the window for another safety feature. After all that, then I can wrap it up. Okay, I have each row of rings connected at the bottom with a safety lock, this little plastic thing. So I forgot that you need one more of these at the bottom of each row, and that's how this locking system works. So I went ahead and put those all into place, but I'm going to show you how to connect that. So if this is your last ring and the string is going through like that, you need one more of these pieces. You have to thread the string through this and through this little piece. So I'm gonna fish the end of the cord through this opening, and then it has to be inside this lock. Oh, there we go. So now that I have this string through all of those pieces, what you have to do is turn this. So there's a little notch. Can you see it? There's a little notch right there. Turn it so that that notch snaps into place. And then that notch locks it into place on the edge. So now you can see that it's not gonna go anywhere. And then besides that, you might want to wait until after it's installed in case you need to make adjustments, but then you can put a little knot at the bottom, and that will keep that from sliding around at all, because there is a little bit of slide if you don't put that knot there. And then it's all set. It is done.